I never expected a simple dinner with my son to turn into a moment I'd never forget. It was Tuesday evening in Dallas, Texas, and I had agreed to meet my son, Andrew, at O'Malley's Steakhouse, the kind of place with red leather booths, soft jazz in the background, and the smell of perfectly seared steaks lingering in the air. The restaurant wasn't crowded, just enough chatter to mask any sound we didn't want others to hear. Thank you for being here with me today. I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city, your state, or even your country in the comments. And while you're here, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. Now, back to my story. Andrew arrived first, dressed in one of his tailored suits. He seemed distracted, constantly glancing at the entrance, checking his phone. I noticed the subtle signs immediately, the tapping fingers, the quick swallow, the furrowed brow. Something was off. I slid into the booth across from him, forcing a smile. "How's work?" I asked, hoping to break the tension. He nodded distractedly, muttering something about a client in Houston. I knew better. He was hiding something, and I could feel it in my bones. Our waitress approached, setting menus down. I ordered the ribeye, medium rare. Andrew barely glanced at the menu before ordering the same. The conversation was polite, but I felt a strange distance between us, a tension I hadn't noticed in years. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. The screen lit up with a single message. "Leave now. Don't say a word." No sender, no explanation, just 3 words that made my heart slam against my ribs. I froze. Scam? Maybe, but no scammer knew I was here, in this restaurant, sitting across from Andrew. Danger. That thought hit me next. I looked at Andrew. He hadn't noticed. He was scrolling through his phone, his attention elsewhere. I felt a surge of protectiveness, my stomach twisting with fear. I didn't know what I was walking into, but instinct told me to act. I excused myself. "Bathroom break," I said lightly, though my voice betrayed nothing. Andrew nodded, too distracted to question me. I stepped out into the cool Dallas evening. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of grilling meat from the restaurant's kitchen vents. My phone buzzed again. "Don't go back. Watch." Watch? What? I scanned the restaurant window, my eyes locked on the booth. A tall man in a gray suit approached Andrew, sliding into the seat across from him. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a calm, almost confident smile. Andrew's expression shifted immediately, a mix of tension and recognition. They spoke quietly, leaning toward each other. The man's voice was low, the kind that demands attention without shouting. Andrew nodded, swallowing hard, fidgeting with his phone like he hadn't before. I realized then the text wasn't random. Someone wanted me out. Someone wanted Andrew alone. I stepped back, ducking near a hedge outside the restaurant, heart hammering. I watched as the man opened the briefcase just slightly. Documents, perhaps? Andrew's eyes widened. Then he nodded. Whatever was happening, it wasn't casual. It was dangerous. I debated stepping inside, confronting him, warning my son, but something told me patience was my ally. I couldn't rush in blind. Whoever had sent that warning message knew more than I did. For 10 minutes, I observed. The man left first, walking toward a black Cadillac SUV with tinted windows parked outside. He climbed in, and the car glided away silently. Andrew followed moments later, his Tesla glinting under the streetlights, phone pressed to his ear. He drove off quickly, oblivious to my presence. I remained in the shadows, pulling out my phone again. Another message. "Stay silent. Trust me." Trust who? The ambiguity gnawed at me.
The protective father in me burned with a desire to intervene, yet the cautious side whispered, "Patience." I had to understand the situation fully before acting. Back at home, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my recliner, the text glowing on my phone, replaying every detail of the evening. Andrew's furtive glances, the way he tensed when the man in the suit approached, the quiet nods and his whispered responses. Every gesture was a clue. By 2 a.m., a final message arrived. "You're not ready, but soon." No sender, no number to trace, just a warning and a threat, or maybe a promise.
I leaned back, thoughts racing. The boy I had raised, the one who used to beg me to take him fishing at White Rock Lake, now seemed a stranger. Andrew had become tangled in something I couldn't yet see. I knew one thing. I had been drawn into a game I didn't understand, and the first move had already been made. The next morning I walked past the steakhouse again, casually observing the parking lot. Andrew's Tesla wasn't there, but the lingering memory of last night's meeting stayed with me. That man, Victor Hale, I learned later, was no ordinary businessman. He was calculated, and Andrew was in his web. As I drove home, I kept thinking about the choices ahead. How much could I intervene without endangering my son? How much patience could I muster before I struck? And then, as if echoing my thoughts, the phone buzzed again. Watch closely. Actions have consequences. I gripped the steering wheel, jaw tight. The first move was over. The rest of the game had just begun. I didn't know how far this would go. I only knew I had to protect Andrew, and that protecting him might force me into decisions I wasn't ready to make. If you were in my shoes, what would you do next? Let me know in the comments section. The morning after the mysterious text, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my chest. Andrew wasn't just acting strange. He was hiding something, and whatever it was, it had reached a level I didn't yet understand. I started quietly, cautiously. My first stop was the bank. Andrew had made the mistake of adding me as a backup contact on one of his early accounts. Most people forget to remove these details. I hadn't. At Chase Bank on Main Street, I met with Tom Reynolds, a manager I had known for years through community events. After some casual conversation about old charity drives, I asked carefully, "Tom, can you check on my son's accounts? I need to know if there's anything unusual." He hesitated, glancing around, then quietly handed me a file. Andrew had multiple accounts, not just personal checking, hidden accounts, offshore transfers, large amounts moving between Florida, Texas, and Nevada. Laundering money? Possibly. Or maybe something else. Either way, the risk was enormous. I left the bank with my mind spinning. My son, the boy I raised, the one I trusted, was caught in something dangerous. I needed to know more. That evening, I reached out to Frank Dalton, an old friend and retired detective who now ran a small security firm in Dallas. Frank owed me. Years ago, I had helped him avoid foreclosure, and he had never forgotten. "Frank," I said over the phone, "I need discreet surveillance on Andrew. No questions. Just watch. Follow him, note meetings, movements, everything." Within hours, Frank had a team tailing Andrew's Tesla. The first report came in the next morning. Andrew had driven to Fort Worth, stopping at an unmarked office building tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered diner. He spent 3 hours inside. When he left, he wasn't alone. The suited man from O'Malley's was with him.
Frank's notes describe the series of handshakes, briefcase exchanges, and coded gestures. They looked like ordinary business deals, but the level of secrecy screamed danger. Over the next week, Andrew traveled to Houston and Austin, meeting men in expensive suits at restaurants, offices, and even hotel lobbies. Frank's team documented every detail. It was as if Andrew was running a parallel life, one completely separate from the carefully crafted facade he had maintained at home.
By now, my worry had turned to fear. I had raised Andrew to be careful, cautious, but now he seemed swallowed by something far beyond his control. One night, I stayed in my recliner, phone in hand, scrolling through Frank's photos and notes. My head ached. The realization hit me. Andrew wasn't just hiding small secrets, he was in over his head, risking everything. And he didn't know how deep it went. Then it hit me. The text, the warning, the one that had pulled me out of the restaurant. What if it wasn't meant for me at all? The thought shook me. I called Andrew, but he didn't answer. I tried again. Voicemail. Then a text. "Call me when you can. It's urgent." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I drove to White Rock Lake, where Andrew and I used to fish when he was a boy. The calm water usually brought clarity, but tonight it only reflected my growing unease. The next morning, a message came through on my landline, the kind of message that made my blood run cold. "Dad, meet me at the old pier at White Rock Lake tomorrow morning. Not at home, not on the phone. Don't be late." I didn't hesitate. This was my son reaching out, and something told me this wasn't just about the accounts or strange meetings. This was bigger. When I arrived at the pier, the fog was thick, the water still. Andrew was pacing, his hands in his pockets, face pale. "Dad," he said, voice trembling, "you shouldn't have been at O'Malley's." "I needed to know you were safe," I said. The text, it was meant for me," he admitted. "Not you. Someone tried to warn me, but they got the number wrong. I was supposed to leave. I wasn't supposed to involve you."
The revelation hit me like a hammer. The warning wasn't for me at all. My son had been in danger, and I had unknowingly inserted myself into it. Andrew continued, voice low. "Victor Hale. He's the man. He's dangerous. He has files, connections, people watching, everything. If I hadn't played along, he could have destroyed everything. Us, the family, even you." I felt my chest tighten. The man at the steakhouse, the briefcase, the confidence, the calm demeanor. It wasn't ordinary business. It was manipulation, control. Andrew's life wasn't just complicated. It was a chessboard he didn't know how to navigate. I sat beside him on the pier, silent for a long moment. The fog hung heavy, the water barely moving, reflecting our tension. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked finally. "I wanted to protect you," he admitted. "I thought if I handled it myself, no one would get hurt. I didn't realize it would pull you in." The weight of the situation settled over me. My son had been hiding secrets serious enough to risk his life, and now I knew. The text, the warning, the danger, it all made sense, but understanding it didn't make it any easier. I realized I had a choice: intervene immediately and risk everything, or wait, watch, and plan carefully. Either path carried danger. I looked out across the foggy lake, the early sun struggling through the mist. One thing was clear. Andrew was in trouble far beyond my imagination, and someone was watching. Protecting him, maybe, or maybe ensuring he remained trapped. For the first time in years, I felt that old familiar fire rise inside me, the desire to protect, to control, and, if necessary, to exact justice. I would not let my son face this alone. Not now. Not ever.
Who do you think sent the warning text?
The morning after the White Rock Lake meeting, I couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't just external. Something inside my own life, my own history was unraveling, or at least revealing itself. Andrew had spoken Victor Hale's name, and it stirred something buried. I remembered Linda, my late wife. Her smile, her patience, the warmth she carried into every room. She had been gone for 5 years, but in my mind, her presence was constant. Yet now, her name surfaced in ways I didn't understand. I went to my study, a room lined with old books, photos, and files I had kept from our years together. On a shelf, hidden behind photo albums, was a small lockbox Linda had insisted be kept away from prying eyes. I had never touched it since her funeral. Tonight, curiosity overpowered hesitation. Inside, I found old documents, letters, receipts, photos, and one folder labeled McCarthy Trust, Miami. My heart sank. McCarthy was Linda's maiden name, the one I had never questioned, the one I'd loved and trusted. I flipped through the papers. Receipts from hotels in Miami, dated decades ago. Correspondence between Linda and someone named Victor Hale. Notes about transfers, accounts, and meetings. My hands shook. My wife had been in contact with the man who now threatened Andrew. Not just contact, but what appeared to be a financial partnership. Millions of dollars, quietly moved through accounts, funneled through shell corporations in Florida and Nevada. Betrayal surged through me. How had she kept this from me? How many decisions had she made without my knowledge? My mind spun, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the woman in these documents, negotiating money with the man who now endangered our son. I called Frank Dalton immediately. Frank, I need everything you can find on Victor Hale's history in Miami, and check the McCarthy Trust. I need to know what my wife was involved in, and why. Frank was cautious. Walter, you sure you want to go down this road? Some of this might be unpleasant. I don't care, I said, my voice firm. I need the truth. Over the next few days, Frank and his team dug into the trust, the accounts, and Victor Hale's past. They found links to offshore entities, investments under Linda's name, and transactions that suggested influence far beyond what I had imagined. Each discovery tightened the grip of unease around my chest. My wife had lived a life within a life, and somehow Andrew had inherited pieces of it, unwittingly stepping into danger. The more I learned, the more I realized the stakes. Victor Hale wasn't just a manipulative businessman. He had been connected to my family long before Andrew's involvement. And now, decades later, his influence reached across the country, touching everything we had tried to build. I sat in the study one evening, the papers spread across my desk. A photograph fell from the folder, and I froze. It showed Linda standing beside Victor Hale, her hand resting lightly on his arm, dated 1991. My chest tightened. That was years before Andrew was born. My wife had chosen to interact with this man long before our family became involved in his orbit. I felt a mix of emotions, shock, confusion, anger, and a deep, aching sadness. How well did I know Linda? How much of our life together had been influenced by secrets I could never have imagined? Andrew's earlier warning, the text, the danger he faced, all of it suddenly fit into a larger puzzle. Victor Hale was not a new threat. He was a long-term shadow on our family's life. I called Andrew. I've found things about your mother, things about Victor Hale. We need to talk. He sounded tense, hesitant. Dad, I don't know if I'm ready. Too late, I said. You're already in this, and now, so am I. I realized that confronting Andrew with these discoveries might frighten him further, but keeping the truth from him was no longer an option. He needed to understand the danger he was in, and I needed to know what he knew. Later that night, I reviewed the McCarthy Trust documents again.
Each line revealed transactions, transfers, and contracts that connected Victor Hale to multiple properties in Miami, Florida, and even companies operating in Nevada and Texas. It wasn't just money, it was influence, power, and control. I remembered the warning text from the steakhouse. Whoever sent it was aware of Andrew's danger, possibly aware of Victor's manipulations, and perhaps aware of my emerging knowledge of the past. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was still incomplete. I felt a bitter mix of betrayal and determination. Betrayal for the secrets my wife had kept. Determination because I realized that knowledge was power. If I could understand the full extent of this connection, I could protect Andrew and, if necessary, exact revenge.
As I sat in the dim light of the study, I felt the old fire rise again. Linda had left me a legacy more complicated than I could have imagined, but I was ready to follow it. I would dig deeper into her past, into Victor Hale's life, and into Andrew's situation, because the safety of my son and the justice owed to my family depended on it. The next morning, I called Frank again. We need to trace every transaction, every contact, every meeting. Victor Hale didn't just appear overnight. There's a history here, and we're going to uncover it. Frank's gravelly voice came through the phone. Walter, you sure you're ready for what's coming? I don't have a choice, I said. If I don't face the past, Andrew won't have a future. I hung up, staring at the photograph of Linda and Victor on my desk. I didn't feel anger or grief, not fully. I felt a sense of purpose. The shadows of the past had emerged, and now I was going to confront them. The pieces were in motion, and I could sense the tension building. One misstep, one wrong word, one delayed action, and the entire family could be at risk. But one right move, one calculated strike, and the tables could be turned. The question now was simple. How much of the past was I willing to uncover? And when I did, would the truth protect my son, or push him further into danger? Would you confront the past, or dig deeper, like me? If you are still here with me, please share this video to your loved ones and hit the subscribe button. The moment I understood the depth of Victor Hale's influence, I knew that patience alone would not protect my son. Andrew had already been ensnared in the web left behind by my late wife, and the stakes were far higher than I had imagined. I began quietly, deliberately. I didn't make a scene, didn't confront anyone prematurely. Instead, I reached out to old contacts, men I had helped over the years, associates who owed me favors, and lawyers who had once relied on my discretion. Every phone call was a test of loyalty, every conversation a careful step in building the infrastructure I needed. First, I contacted Frank Dalton. We need to map Victor Hale's entire network. I want accounts, properties, legal filings, offshore entities, everything. Frank's gravelly voice hesitated on the other end. Walter, this is more than you think. Are you sure you're ready to go this deep? I don't have a choice, I said. Andrew's life depends on it. Within days, Frank had assembled a team. They were discreet, untraceable, skilled at moving silently without alerting the subjects of their investigation. Surveillance photos began to arrive on my encrypted phone. Victor meeting with men in offices, restaurants, and hotel lobbies across Miami, Houston, and Austin. Meanwhile, I enlisted legal assistance. Old lawyers from my business days drafted subpoenas, quietly filed in multiple jurisdictions. Bank accounts under Victor's name and his associates were quietly frozen. Every move was calculated, intended to entrap Victor without tipping him off. I felt like a chess player positioning pieces across a vast board. Each transaction traced, each meeting observed,
was a step closer to dismantling the network he had built. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized Victor's reach was extensive.
Andrew remained in the middle, unwittingly participating in this dangerous game. He still had to attend meetings, sign documents, and interact with men who didn't fully trust him. Each encounter I monitored made my pulse quicken. His naivety could endanger him, or worse, our family. One evening, I received a report from Frank that stopped me cold. Victor had flown to Houston, meeting Andrew at a small office tucked in an unremarkable building downtown. Photos showed them exchanging briefcases, speaking in hushed tones. Andrew appeared tense, almost fearful, but compliant. I realized then that Victor's influence was more insidious than I imagined. He wasn't just a threat, he was manipulating Andrew, shaping him, controlling him in subtle ways. The man's power wasn't brute force, it was patience and persuasion, and Andrew had walked straight into it. I spent the next several nights reviewing every detail, every photo, every report. I studied Victor's habits, his meetings, his flights. I traced his connections through Florida and Nevada, noticing patterns, accounts funneling money quietly through shell companies, legal filings made under aliases, real estate purchases timed strategically. As I analyzed the network, a plan began to form. I would use the system against him. Surveillance would feed information to law enforcement. Legal channels would quietly trap his assets. Bank freezes and subpoenas would collapse the structure he had built. And I would remain in the shadows, invisible, unseen, ready to strike when the time was right. But even with all this preparation, fear lingered. One misstep, one rash action, and Andrew could be hurt. One careless move, and our family could be exposed. I had to be precise, patient, meticulous. The stakes were too high to rush. I started coordinating with a few trusted attorneys in Miami and Texas, sharing anonymized evidence. Each lawyer I contacted was discreet, professional, and experienced in handling high-stakes financial investigations. The goal wasn't just to protect my son, it was to dismantle Victor Hale's operations without warning him. Days passed, and I monitored every update Frank sent. I watched as Andrew's life remained precarious, balancing business obligations with the subtle dangers that now surrounded him. I realized the man I had once thought I understood, my son, the boy I had taught responsibility, honesty, and integrity, was now a key player in a dangerous game he didn't fully understand.
One night, I sat in my study, staring at a photograph of Victor Hale with Andrew. The man's calm smile mocked the chaos he had set in motion. I clenched my fist. Patience. That was the weapon I had. Patience and planning. I called Andrew that evening. "I need you to trust me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I can't intervene directly yet, but I'm building a safety net. You stay cautious, don't make sudden moves, and don't trust anyone blindly." His voice was tight but relieved. "Dad, thank you. I don't know what I would do without you." "You'll find out soon enough," I said softly. "Just keep yourself safe until then." Even as I spoke, I felt the tension building. Every day that Victor's network remained intact was another day of danger. Every meeting Andrew attended was another potential threat. But I had to stay calm, control my emotions, and plan strategically. One wrong move could destroy everything. I spent the following week coordinating bank freezes, legal filings, and surveillance updates. The pieces were beginning to move, quietly, invisibly, without Victor noticing. His confidence in Andrew, and perhaps even in me, was intact, but it would be the very thing that allowed me to strike. And as I sat in my study one night, reviewing a report showing Victor's hidden accounts in Nevada, I allowed myself a small smile. The trap was being laid. Every meeting Andrew attended, every transaction Victor made,
was bringing us closer to the moment when justice and revenge would be possible. But I knew one thing clearly. I couldn't rush. One impulsive move could ruin everything. Patience, precision, and timing would be my greatest allies. The investigation wasn't just about uncovering the past. It was about protecting my son, preparing for the inevitable confrontation, and making sure that when Victor Hale's empire began to collapse, no one in my family would be harmed. I took a deep breath, staring at the organized chaos of papers, photos, and reports in front of me. The plan was coming together, quietly, invisibly. Victor Hale had no idea the storm that was forming around him, and Andrew's life depended on keeping it that way until the perfect moment. If you had one shot at revenge, would you wait or act immediately? Subscribe, like, and share to weigh in.
The day the first legal filings were processed, I felt a strange mix of tension and anticipation. Every move I had made in the past weeks, surveillance, subpoenas, bank freezes, was about to pay off. The trap was set. Victor Hale remained unaware, confident as ever, conducting business as if nothing had changed. Andrew, however, was beginning to sense the subtle tremors beneath the surface. He received emails he couldn't fully understand, calls from partners abruptly canceled, and meetings shifted without explanation. The cracks in Victor's empire were beginning to show. I watched it unfold through Frank's updates, photos of office doors being served with legal papers, surveillance confirming bank accounts being frozen, and Victor's associates reacting with growing frustration. All of it was a silent symphony of chaos. Victor had no idea it was orchestrated from thousands of miles away, quietly, methodically, by someone he believed to be powerless. Me. The first public fallout came when a Miami-based subsidiary of Victor's collapsed after authorities froze its accounts. News reports barely hinted at the story, financial irregularities, fraud investigations. But for Victor, it was the first domino to fall. Andrew called me that evening, voice shaky. "Dad, the people in the office, they're panicking. Victor's furious. And some of the deals he promised me, gone." I kept my tone calm, even soothing. "Stay focused. Don't react. Let them make mistakes. You'll be safe if you stick to the plan." He exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders in a brief, shaky release. I can't believe how fast it's falling apart." As I reviewed Frank's reports late that night, a shocking detail emerged. Hidden deep within the McCarthy Trust files were additional documents linking my late wife Linda to Victor far more extensively than I had realized. This wasn't just casual financial interaction. She had been orchestrating elements of the business network, using her influence to manage accounts, facilitate deals, and even shield certain associates from scrutiny. I leaned back, staring at the documents, disbelief and betrayal mixing in equal measure. Linda's hand in these matters had been subtle but deliberate, and Andrew, unknowingly, had been drawn into the consequences of her decisions decades later. It was a bitter pill, realizing that my wife's legacy wasn't just the love and warmth I remembered. It was a web of manipulation and control that had ensnared my son. The next morning, Frank sent another set of updates. Photos captured Victor in meetings, his calm demeanor now tinged with frustration. Associates whispered in hallways. Briefcases were exchanged in silence, and there was a growing tension in every interaction. Even Victor's closest confidants appeared uneasy. I realized then that the second plot twist had fully revealed itself. Linda's involvement had shaped events in ways I hadn't imagined. Her hand in Victor's operations, while meant to protect or manage something, had indirectly placed Andrew in danger. The complexity of it both shocked and clarified the situation for me. Victor's empire began to crumble, but there was a pattern I couldn't ignore. Certain decisions he made, certain reactions he had, they seemed eerily anticipated. Someone was always one step ahead, predicting his moves,
quietly countering them. The mysterious figure remained unknown, but their presence was undeniable. I couldn't yet identify them, but the awareness of their control added another layer of tension. This was no longer just a battle between Victor and us. It was a game with hidden players, someone pulling strings in the background. I called Andrew again, emphasizing caution. Do not trust anyone blindly. Every step you take is being watched, and some of the watchers are unknown. His voice was tight with anxiety. Dad, I don't know who to trust anymore. You trust yourself, I said firmly, and you trust the plan. That's all you need right now. By the end of the week, more dominoes fell. Miami authorities froze additional assets, Texas officials intervened in local subsidiaries, and key players in Victor's network were suddenly unreachable. Each collapse added pressure, and Andrew was forced to witness firsthand the consequences of actions he hadn't fully understood. Despite the success of the operations, I felt a quiet worry. Every move we made increased the risk to my son. Victor's wrath was rising, his frustration mounting, and the unknown figure observing from the shadows added an unpredictable element. Satisfaction was tempered with fear. Victory was within reach, but the cost remained uncertain. Late one evening, Andrew showed up at my Dallas home, his expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Dad, they're finally noticing something's wrong. Victor's losing control. Yes, I said, voice calm but heart racing. But stay alert. Every empire falls slowly, and sometimes the one you think you're fighting isn't the only threat. He nodded, comprehension dawning. You mean someone else?
Yes, I said. Someone who has been anticipating our moves, someone who knows more than we realize. We sat in silence, the weight of the revelations settling between us. Andrew's exposure to the consequences had made him understand the seriousness of his actions, his mother's past, and the danger that now surrounded us both. The first strike had succeeded. Victor's empire was showing visible cracks. The legal filings, the bank freezes, the surveillance, all of it was working. But the presence of the hidden figure, the awareness of someone anticipating every move, reminded me that this victory was only the beginning. As I looked at Andrew, I felt a surge of protective determination. My son had witnessed the chaos, and I needed to ensure his safety while preparing for the next phase. Every step I had taken had been methodical, deliberate, and carefully calculated. Now, I will continue to watch, wait, and plan. The first strike had changed everything. Victor's empire was vulnerable. Andrew had been shaken. And I had uncovered the second layer of deception in Linda's past. But the game was far from over, and someone was still out there, unseen, predicting, controlling, and waiting. I poured myself a drink, letting the warmth settle in my chest. Satisfaction was there, yes, but it was tempered with the awareness that the next move could determine everything. Who is manipulating the events behind the scenes? Can you guess? If yes, let me know in the comment section.
The morning the news broke, the entire country seemed to pause for a moment. Victor Hale, the man whose influence had touched my family for decades, had been publicly exposed, arrested. His empire crumbling, finally collapsing under the weight of legal scrutiny, bank freezes, and damning evidence. The reports streamed across television screens in every major city: Miami, Dallas, Houston, and Austin. Authorities detailed financial misconduct, offshore accounts, and a network of associates manipulated into compliance. Victor Hale's name, once whispered in fear in executive suites and boardrooms, was now splashed across headlines in bold letters. I sat in my study, reviewing Frank's latest reports, a sense of vindication settling over me. The months of meticulous planning, patient observation, and carefully timed actions had succeeded. Andrew's danger was finally being addressed, at least on the surface. But as I scanned the documents, a realization hit me. Someone had anticipated moves that even I had thought secret. Certain transfers Victor attempted were quietly intercepted before he even knew they were being monitored. Certain legal filings seemed to trigger immediate reactions, almost as if a shadowy presence had been watching and guiding events from the other side. I had always suspected there was more than one player in this game. Now I knew for certain. While Victor was a target, someone else had been orchestrating, anticipating, controlling, and perhaps protecting in their own way. Late that afternoon, a message arrived. An email. No subject, no sender, just a photograph and a single line. You're close, but the game isn't over. The photograph was unnerving. A blurred image of Victor in a private meeting room, documents spread across the table, a figure in the background watching him. Someone had been one step ahead all along. I stared at it, mind racing. Who was this person? Ally? Enemy? Victor's past associate? Or someone from Linda's hidden history? The mystery only deepened the tension. The payoff had begun, but the danger lingered like a shadow over everything we had accomplished. I called Andrew immediately. He picked up, voice cautious. "Dad, I just saw the news. Victor, he's gone, arrested." "Yes," I said, keeping my tone steady, "but there's more you need to understand. Someone else has been moving pieces behind the scenes. The danger isn't entirely gone. You need to stay cautious." Andrew paused, then said softly, "I understand. I never realized how much this affected you, how much you've done for me." I felt a lump form in my throat. The months of tension, surveillance, planning, and fear had brought us to this moment. Finally, I could speak the words that had been unspoken for so long. "Andrew," I said quietly, "I did everything because I had to protect you. But you also need to understand, you've been part of this too. Your choices, your actions, your patience, all of it mattered. And mistakes were made, on all sides." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I know, Dad. I know now. I should have trusted you sooner, and I should have seen the danger I was walking into." We sat together in silence, the tension of the past months slowly easing. The weight of secrets, deception, and danger had been heavy on both of us. Now, at least temporarily, it was lifted. Yet the photograph on my phone reminded me that the game wasn't truly over. Someone was still orchestrating, still observing, still controlling events in ways we could not yet perceive. Victor's arrest was only the first wave of justice. The shadows behind it remained. I reviewed the timeline. Months of surveillance, meetings, bank freezes, subpoenas, and legal maneuvers. Every piece fell into place perfectly. Victor's empire collapsed, Andrew's immediate danger was reduced, but the presence of the unseen figure ensured that the tension, the suspense, and the threat were far from gone. That night, Andrew and I sat on the back porch, the Dallas skyline glowing faintly under the stars. He turned to me, voice low. "Dad, I want to help. I want to understand fully, and I want to be ready if someone else comes." I nodded, heart heavy with both pride and worry. "You will, son. But first, we need to recover. We need to be smart. One wrong move, and everything we've done could be undone." He looked down at his hands, considering, then met my gaze. "I trust you, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next, together."
That statement struck a chord deep in my chest. The months of fear, secrecy, and careful planning had led us to this point. We had weathered the first wave of danger, but the second, this unknown orchestrator, was still out there. Frank Dalton called later that evening. "Walter, Victor's empire is officially in pieces. Everything you've worked on is solid. But keep your eyes open. There's evidence that someone else has been controlling aspects of this. They might reach out." I thanked him and ended the call, staring at the photograph once more. The figure in the background remained faceless, their intentions unclear. They had anticipated every move, countered every action, and yet had not revealed themselves fully. I knew then that the payoff wasn't about victory alone. It was about vigilance, protecting Andrew, understanding the past, and preparing for the unknown. My role as a father had evolved. I was now a guardian, a strategist, and a planner, balancing the satisfaction of success with the tension of looming threats. The day ended with Andrew and I sharing a quiet meal. No words about revenge, no discussions of strategy, just a simple acknowledgement of survival, loyalty, and the costs of secrets that had been buried too long. And yet, as I placed my phone down, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. The unseen figure remained a question, a challenge, a puzzle yet to be solved. The payoff was real, but incomplete, and my son and I had to be ready for whatever came next. Do you think I can truly protect my son now? Let's discuss in the comments section.
It had been a quiet week. Victor Hale was behind bars, his empire fractured, and Andrew seemed, for the first time in months, to breathe a little easier. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe that the nightmare had ended, that the months of planning, surveillance, and careful orchestration had finally brought us to safety. But the peace was short-lived. Late one evening, as I was reviewing the final files Frank Dalton had sent on Victor's operations, my phone buzzed. A message. No number, no name, just an image attachment. I opened it cautiously. The photograph showed a luxury yacht anchored off the coast of Miami. A man stood on the deck facing away. Tall, broad-shouldered, unmistakable posture. Victor Hale, alive. My heart stopped. Beneath the photo, a single line of text. The game is far from over. We're just beginning. I read it again, slowly, methodically. Victor was alive. Somehow he had escaped or been replaced by a look-alike for the authorities. Or maybe this was someone entirely new using his likeness as intimidation. And worse, there were unknown allies, people who had managed to orchestrate his survival, watching, waiting. I sat back, letting the tension settle. The calm I had allowed myself earlier evaporated instantly. Andrew had been safe temporarily, yes, but the real danger was still out there, lurking in shadows I couldn't yet see. I called Frank immediately. "Frank, it's Victor. He's alive, and this message, it's intentional. Someone is warning us or testing us." Frank's deep voice came through, filled with concern. "Walter, you need to be careful. Whoever sent that photo is dangerous. Could be Victor, could be one of his allies, or someone else entirely. We're not dealing with normal threats here."
I nodded slowly, though he couldn't see me. I understood completely. Every move over the past months had been observed. Someone had anticipated every strike, every legal filing, every trap. And now, with Victor alive, the stakes had climbed to a terrifying new level. Andrew appeared at my side, sensing my tension. "Dad, what is it?" I showed him the photograph and read the text aloud. He paled, fear flickering in his eyes, but there was also determination. "So, he's not gone? Not really?" "No," I said quietly. "And someone else is involved, someone we haven't seen yet. We need to stay calm, but we also need to prepare. The months of planning had taught me the value of patience. Every action had consequences. Every misstep could endanger Andrew, or worse, undo the progress we had made. But now, with Victor alive and unknown players in motion, patience alone would not suffice. I turned my gaze to the city skyline outside my study window. The lights of Dallas shimmered, a reminder of the world outside, unaware of the silent chessboard I had been maneuvering across. I realized that revenge, justice, and protection were intertwined but incomplete. There was one final phase, one I had not yet anticipated fully. Frank called back later that night with preliminary updates on potential Victor allies. The names were familiar yet obscure: financial operatives, offshore contractors, and shadowy figures from Miami and Houston who had previously operated under Victor's radar. They had disappeared after the arrests, but now it seemed they were active again. Andrew listened intently. "Dad, do we know who they are?" "Not yet," I said, "but we'll find out, and when we do, we'll be ready. That's the only way to survive this."
We spent hours reviewing every detail of Victor's past connections, every transaction, every photograph, and every anomaly in the files Frank had gathered. The more we analyzed, the more patterns emerged, hints of alliances, secret communications, and silent observers. Someone had been manipulating events behind the scenes all along, and now, with Victor alive, their plan was accelerating. I felt the familiar fire rising again, the protective, calculating fire of a father who had seen danger, studied it, and prepared to confront it. Every step over the past months had led to this, a moment where the stakes were higher than ever, the unknown more dangerous, and the family's safety hanging by a thread. Andrew stood beside me, watching as I mapped out potential moves. "Dad, I know we can't act blindly, but are we ready for what's coming?" I turned to him, my gaze steady. "We have to be. We've come too far to falter now. Patience, planning, observation, we'll use all of it, and we'll stay one step ahead, no matter what." Even as I spoke, the photograph lingered in my mind. The yacht, the figure on deck, the cryptic message. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but now at least I had clarity. The next moves would be ours to make, calculated and deliberate, with Andrew at my side. For the first time in months, a sense of determination replaced fear. The mystery remained unsolved, the threat real, but we were ready to confront it. The unknown figure, the surviving Victor, the unseen allies, they all awaited our response. And I knew that the game, far from over, had entered its most critical phase. One wrong decision could cost everything. One correct move could finally secure our family's future. I took a deep breath, letting the tension settle for a moment. The father in me, the protector, the strategist, the silent avenger, all were ready. The phone buzzed again, another image, this time showing a briefcase sitting in the middle of a deserted dock in Houston, with the line, "Check carefully. Everything you know is only part of the truth." I studied it, feeling the weight of the warning. Whoever had sent this was clever, precise, and deliberate. And yet, for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was patient, I was prepared, and I was determined. Andrew looked at me, a mixture of awe and concern. "So, this is just the beginning?" "Yes," I said, voice calm, measured. "The fight isn't over, but we'll face it, together, and we will prevail." I slid my phone back into my pocket, took a slow breath, and let the cool night air wash over me. The storm was approaching, but we were ready. And when it struck, we would meet it head-on. If you want a part 2, let me know in the comment section, and I'll tell you how it all ended. But in the meantime, please share, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel. See you in my next video.